The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you. Or wonders they say shall never cease to happen. For generations, Africa was told what resources it could exploit and how it should develop. Today, in this 2026, those same pressures are being repackaged through foreign-funded litigation and ideological campaigns. Outside forces are once again seeking to dictate Africans' energy choices from thousands of kilometers away. This is the story of the East African crude oil pipeline on a 1,400-kilometer project designed to carry Uganda oil to a coastal port in Tanzania for global export. Backed by the French energy giant Total Energies and regional companies, this multi-billion-dollar project has been under construction for nearly a decade and is finally scheduled to begin operations later this year. Yet, it faces severe resistance. A lawsuit launched in the United Kingdom seeks to stop the pipeline entirely, but African energy leaders are pushing back, calling this legal battle nothing less than colonialism to zero. They argue a simple truth. UK courts should not determine Uganda's energy future.
2.0. That is what the Johannesburg-based African Energy Chamber is calling a lawsuit in the UK that's seeking to stop the construction of the East African crude oil pipeline between Uganda and Tanzania. Now, the South African Energy Advocacy Group argues that issues concerning Africans should not be settled in places like London.
For generations, Africa was told what resources it could exploit and how it should develop. Today, some of those same pressures are being repackaged through foreign-funded litigation and ideological campaigns that seek to dictate Africa's energy choices from thousands of kilometres away. UK courts should not determine Uganda's energy future.
The 1,400-kilometre pipeline has been under construction for close to a decade. Now, it's meant to carry Ugandan oil to a coastal port in Tanzania and further on for global export. Scheduled to begin operations later this year, the multi-billion-dollar project is backed by French energy giant Total Energies as well as regional companies. But the pipeline has faced severe local backlash and international lawsuits. Well, a Ugandan student movement has held protests against the venture, claiming that Africa needs to shift to, quote, clean energy that benefits local communities. However, that movement is being directly and openly sponsored by the Global Green Grants Fund, which is an official grantee of Hungarian-American billionaire George Soros, according to his Open Society Foundation's website. Well, we can speak to the executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber in question, NJ Ayok. You're most welcome to the programme. The lawsuit against the pipeline was launched in the UK by Ugandan farmers. Why do you oppose their motion?
First of all, we oppose this motion because the Ugandan farmers could not fund this lawsuit. It is funded by Western groups that do not really care about African energy development. Think about this. 600 million Africans have no access to electricity. 900 million Africans have no access to clean cooking technologies. The East African courts, regional courts set in East Africa, ruled against this. Ugandan courts ruled against this. African courts ruled against this. Now the Western groups find it's what you call in law foreign shopping. Find a location in a Western country to make a lawsuit in order to stop an African project, and then use for plenty, which are African farmers, to just drive this. The overwhelming majority of Ugandans support this project. The overwhelming majority of Africans support this project. This is not a project where some foreign companies controlling the country. The country benefits the most. But here's what is also important. The foreign companies operating here, they are acting as guests of the government, not telling the government what to do or telling Ugandans what to do. And I think it's just unfair that in 2026, Africans would have to take decisions about their development coming out of a London court. That really speaks about colonization 2.0.
I suppose there is a question, though, about that line between the right to judicial protection and then, as you've been laying out, interference in the sovereign decisions of an African state. Where is that line in your view?
I've been really one of the best lawyers in the African continent, got an amazing law degree in the United States. I do understand legal jurisprudence with a Juris Doctor in law. But let me tell you something. You have jurisprudence in a country. Wherever you have problems with that contract whatsoever, there is a dispute resolution clause among the parties. Within a country, you do have a dispute resolution mechanism where you can go to courts, you can go to parliament, or if you can even go to regional courts in that region. They missed out on that because you know why? They understood that the people are no longer buying on this Western-driven green colonization movement. They want to pick the kind of energy we use, green energy. They want to pick the kind of energy that we decide if it's solar and wind. We're saying all kinds of energy. Of course, you're free to advocate. I lead Africa's largest advocacy group with 4.5 million people. But I don't think that I should be pressuring African governments sitting in Europe. I should be pressuring African governments sitting in Africa. They don't agree with me all the time, but I think that sometimes we have to let Africans make their own choices. The choice of the people, the choice of the country has been to welcome energy investments without barriers and let us industrialize Africa so our young people don't have to find jobs on the streets of Europe or continue begging for Europeans to do for us what we can do for ourselves. We want to have true financial independence.
The Global Green Grants Fund, which directly sponsors the Ugandan student movement against the pipeline, is an official, as I mentioned, grantee of George Soros's Open Society Foundations. In your view, how is this funding route impacting the case?
George Soros has so much money that he can build power plants, he can build nuclear plants, he can build solar plants, and he can build wind power. But he's spending that money to keep Africans poor. He's spending that money to litigate so that we to continue to beg. That is what is influencing the case. You want to tell me that 4 Ugandan farmers can hire some of the most high-class, some of the top law firms in the United Kingdom to litigate a case in the United Kingdom. Lawyers will be paid £1,000 an hour. These 4 Ugandan farmers can do that. Ugandan students that cannot afford school fees are paying white shoe law firms to litigate against their own interests. We understand
but how could
what
they
this
fund
is.
it themselves? How could these people who lost their land due to the pipeline project, how can they get their problem resolved without help?
It's called free and fair rules of play. You know what you have in Uganda? You have elections. You know what they have there? They have a parliament. You know what they have there? They have a rule of law. The United States is just celebrating 250 years. You might not have Jeffersonian democracy, but you also have African Union courts. You have East African regional courts. To sit back today and tell us that African jurisprudence, African courts, African community or governing laws do not exist. We have to only listen to white folks in London, and the white man's court has to exist. That is really where colonization comes from, that you don't have any sense. You are too beneath us to have any sense to know what is good for you. So we need to wait for the white knight to come tell us what is good for us, because we're subhuman, we're second-class citizens, and we don't understand that if we can produce oil, it's good for us. But let me tell you something. They're producing oil in the United Kingdom. They're opening coal-fired plants. They're buying gas from Russia, from Iran, from the United States, everywhere, because they want to get their people out of energy poverty. They just changed the taxonomy of green energy, of gas, and call it green energy. But that's good for the wealthy people in Europe. But when it comes to Africans using their own gas, their own resources to get out of poverty and improve human flourishing and get their people going, oh no, that's that's not good. We need to send you an edict from London on what you do. We think that that was over. We are independent nations, and we need to speak up, and we need to not accept this, because if they're blocking UK companies from working in Africa, then we should move with the Chinese or move with others. We cannot accept in 2026 that we are going to have what we've branded as colonization 2.0. We are independent, and this should not be happening. We know clearly this is funded. Why? Because of their obsession around climate change. It's called global warming, not Africa warming. Our greenhouse gas emissions are less than 3%. Why should we be praying for the crimes of those that polluted the air? They should be paying us compensation.
To understand why this pipeline matters, we must look at the immense challenges facing the continent. Right now, 600 million Africans have absolutely no access to electricity. Furthermore, 900 million Africans lack access to clean cooking technologies. For the people living through this reality, energy projects like EACOP are not just about business. They are about survival, growth, and basic human dignity. The overwhelming majority of Ugandans and Africans support this project because the country stands to benefit the most. Foreign companies operating here are acting as guests of the government, not masters of the land. It is only fair that Africans and not a London court make the ultimate decisions regarding their own economic development. While opponents claim the UK lawsuit is driven by local Ugandan farmers who lost their land, African energy advocates point out a major contradiction. Simple African farmers do not have the financial means to hire top-tier high-class UK law firms whose lawyers charge £1,000 an hour. This is what legal experts call forum shopping, when regional East Africa courts and Ugandan courts repeatedly ruled against stopping the pipeline. Western advocacy groups took the case to Europe. They are using a handful of African plaintiffs to advance completely different agenda. Even the local students' protests in Uganda against the pipeline are heavily funded by outside forces. In this our world, 2026, we still sit here and people determine the fate of our resources. This is why we call for the African unification, because in our unity lies our strength. If we in this 2026, people still tell us what we should do and what not to do, are we sovereign? Where is the independence we celebrate every year? Like the Sierra Leone First Lady said, if we do not control our resources, if we do not control the narrative, then what shows that we are independent? So that the independence we preach to ourselves, we need to wake up from it, because it's independence on paper and not in reality. And in this world, people who said Africans are independent, and yet the African can still not determine his or her fate. We need to understand, especially with the youth, that we have a lot to contribute to the growth of Africa. And when things are happening and we don't understand, this is not the time for us to jump into it, forcing the narrative to go against our own selves. This is information age. So before you buy into any narrative and rise against your own nation, look at it the other way around. We are in information age. We don't have to be used as instruments against our own progress. Unity will only give us the freedom we are looking for. But if we continue in this modern world to be segregating among ourselves, fighting among ourselves, speaking about independence, leadership, development, and everything about the African in speech, will continue to be treated like junior partners all the time. Because what is happening currently in Africa should be something that we all should rise against. It is not only happening in Uganda, it is across the African continent. And that is why we are seeing that Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are not knowing peace, because they have decided to take their own sovereignty, their own independence into their own hands, where they determine the future of themselves and not people staying thousands of kilometers away, so deciding what they think should be done in our continent. And the youth of today, we have a responsibility to break this chain. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we'll make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, East Africa, and in Uganda.